Hey group leaders, Pastor McKinney here. Welcome to week 9 of our spring semester of growth groups, the place where friends help friends follow Jesus. Before we kind of dive into our lesson, I want to talk about something because you guys had worship and prayer last week, so I hope you guys were encouraged by that. But that means we are now in the month of May, which is the last month of our spring semester. And one of the most common things that can happen in the last month of leading a growth group is a sense of burnout. You can really get tired and you could lose sight of the ultimate purpose for why you led a growth group in the first place. People get tired, people kind of get fatigued, people kind of wonder whether or not they should even be leading a growth group, whether they want to continue, and there can even be some temptations to maybe cancel some groups or take a week off or do something else. It's very important that we all remember the ultimate purpose for why we are leading a growth group. If you remember back at week 1, I said we're all journeying, we're kind of seeking to accomplish one goal this semester, and that is establishing a culture of care in Church at Bergen. And this is for the sake of future generations. You have to remember that we are a part of something bigger than this small spring semester of growth groups. We are seeking to establish permanently a kind of culture that could permanently sustain the health of this church for who knows how long. So you're playing a part, you're playing a piece in something that could permanently affect the future of people and generations to come. So let that encourage you and let that lift your sights off of the temptations to get down into the humdrum of woe is me and I'm so tired, I don't know if I can keep doing this. We all want to fight for a cause greater than themselves. And there's no greater cause than the mission of Jesus Christ to help people to follow Him. So please let that encourage you as we continue on in our last month of the spring semester of groups. This week, we dive into lesson number 6, which is titled Talk About Suffering. This is a very deep chapter. And one of the creative ways that Dr. Welch helps us to talk about suffering with people is he tells the story of the wilderness wanderings of the nation of Israel. And he tells the story to give us kind of like a theological framework, you might say, for how to engage people and understand the different phases that people might be going through. Now, when we engage with people who have suffering, sometimes the suffering is so severe that we can feel like we have nothing to say and it's not our place to enter into that. But we all do share something in common when it comes to suffering. It hurts and it leaves us feeling like we're at the end of ourselves. If anyone's experienced any suffering, we all have those things in common. So please remember those two things as you seek to engage people on this issue. And knowing that might help you overcome some of your fear and anxiety in engaging people with some serious suffering. So one of the things that he talks about in the book is there's this idea that God is always working behind the scenes in people's sufferings. And that helps us to engage them with a lot of compassion. They seem like they're in a lot of pain, but what keeps us hopeful in interacting with them is knowing that God is always at work, even in times of suffering. Another thing that we have to remember when we're dealing with people with suffering is that it's always an opportunity for their faith in Christ to be strengthened. 1 Peter chapter 1 talks about how suffering is actually like a refining fire that causes us to cling to Christ even more tightly. So keeping that in mind, it helps us to also have a sense of hope when dealing with people. And what we always do, remember, we always take these issues to the Lord in prayer. And one of the ways that we express this sense of faith being strengthened in suffering is that we take it to the Lord and we cry out to Him honestly. As we are suffering and as we enter into people with them in their suffering, we take their suffering and we cry out to the Lord together, and that is how we express this sense of faith in Christ being strengthened. This is one of the longest chapters in the entire book, so please take a lot of time to let people process this and encourage people to be open here if they're really going through some really difficult things. remind the group that this is a safe place and what's said in the group stays in the group. And really work hard to make people feel comfortable and trust each other in that. I love you guys. Your advocates are praying for you. The Lord is with you. Trust the Spirit. See you guys next week.